Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the last defense platform power up around Earth. The massive metal structure glowed with blue light as it came online. Jake had been waiting for this moment for 3 months. Today, Earth would close its doors to the galaxy. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. Jake's crew worked at their stations, but everyone knew what was happening. After 50 years of dealing with the Xanthari Empire, humanity had made a choice. They would not bow down anymore. Admiral Lisa Hayes appeared on the main screen from her command center on the moon. Her face was serious but calm. She had gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many battles. "Captain Morrison, are all systems ready?" Jake looked at his crew. Lieutenant Commander Tom Brady nodded from his station. "Defense grid is fully operational, sir. All jump points are covered." Dr. Kevin Walsh stepped forward from where he had been checking the quantum barrier. "Controls." He was a thin man with dark hair who rarely smiled. For 5 years he had worked on this project in secret. The Empire thought they knew everything about human technology. They were wrong. "The quantum barriers are stable," Dr. Walsh said. "Once we activate them, nothing gets in or out of our solar system without our permission." Jake turned back to Admiral Hayes on the screen. "We are ready, Admiral." Lisa Hayes took a deep breath. 3 days ago, the Empire had sent their final message. They wanted Earth to hand over all quantum computer technology. They wanted the blueprints, the manufacturing methods, and the scientists who created them. In return, they promised not to destroy human colonies outside the solar system. The message had been clear. Submit or face destruction? Earth's answer was also clear. "Activate the isolation protocol," Admiral Hayes said. Jake pressed the red button on his command chair. Around Earth, around Mars, around every planet and moon in their solar system, the barriers came to life. They were invisible to the naked eye. But any ship trying to jump into their space would find themselves blocked. The Empire used jump drives to travel between stars. All their ships, all their trade, all their power depended on being able to move quickly through space. The barriers would stop them cold. On his screen, Jake watched as the last readings came in. The barriers were holding. Earth was now cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Dr. Walsh walked over to stand beside Jake's chair. "Do you think we made the right choice, Captain?" Jake thought about the question. 3 months ago, Ambassador Catherine Wells had returned from the Empire's capital world. She had spent 2 years trying to negotiate fair trade deals. Instead, the Empire kept making bigger demands. First, they wanted human medical technology. Then they wanted access to human manufacturing methods. Finally, they demanded complete control over human space. Catherine had stood in the Emperor's throne room and warned them what would happen if they pushed too hard. She told them that humans preferred to work together, but they would not be slaves. The Emperor had laughed at her. "Yes," Jake said to Dr. Walsh. "We made the right choice." On the communication station, Lieutenant Sarah Kim received a message from Earth. President Helen Carter was about to make an announcement to the galaxy. Every human ship, every human colony, every human citizen would hear it at the same time. The President appeared on screens throughout the solar system. She was a woman in her 50s with brown hair and kind eyes. But today, her voice was firm and strong. "My fellow humans," she began, "today we begin a new chapter in our history. The Xanthari Empire has demanded that we surrender our freedom. And our technology, we have chosen a different path." Jake listened as the President explained their decision. Earth would not trade with the Empire anymore. Human ships would not carry Empire goods. Human colonies outside the solar system were free to make their own choices, but Earth would support them in whatever they decided. "We do not do this out of anger," the President continued. "We do this because we believe in our right to determine our own future. The galaxy will survive without us. The question is whether the Empire will survive without us." When the message ended, the bridge was quiet again. Jake knew that in a few hours, the Empire would try to send ships to Earth. Those ships would find themselves unable to enter human space. Dr. Walsh returned to his control station. "Captain, I'm reading Empire ships at the edge of our territory. 3 heavy cruisers and a command vessel. Let them come, Jake said. They'll learn soon enough. The Empire ships approached the barrier at full speed. Jake watched on his sensors as they tried to jump into Earth's solar system. The ships hit the quantum barrier like birds flying into glass. They bounced back, their jump drives overloading from the failed attempt. Lieutenant Brady smiled at his station. Looks like they're trying again, sir. The Empire ships made 5 more attempts to break through. Each time, the barrier held. Finally, they gave up and jumped away. Admiral Hayes contacted Jake from the moon. How are our defenses holding up? Perfect, Admiral. The barriers are stronger than we hoped. Dr. Walsh's design worked exactly as planned. Jake looked out at the stars beyond Earth. Somewhere out there, the Empire was probably calling emergency meetings. They were trying to figure out how to deal with a problem they had never faced before. For 1,000 years, the Empire had ruled by force. They took what they wanted and destroyed anyone who resisted. But they had never dealt with someone who simply refused to play their game. Earth had resources, technology, and most importantly, time. The barriers would give them space to grow and develop without Empire interference. Jake suspected that when the barriers finally came down, humanity would be very different from what the Empire expected. Dr. Walsh looked up from his controls. Captain, I'm detecting something interesting. The barriers aren't just keeping ships out. They're also blocking Empire communication signals. This was unexpected but not unwelcome. It meant the Empire could not spy on human activities or contact any agents they might have left behind. How long can we maintain this? Jake asked. As long as we want, Dr. Walsh replied. The barriers draw power from our quantum generators. We have enough fuel to keep them running for decades. Jake nodded. This was good news. Earth had time to prepare for whatever came next. As he watched the stars, Jake wondered what the galaxy would look like when humanity finally opened its doors. Again, he suspected it would be very different from the galaxy they were leaving behind. Emperor Zethkar sat on his golden throne and read the reports that his advisors had brought him. 3 months had passed since the humans had sealed themselves away from the galaxy. The Emperor had expected them to come crawling back within weeks, begging for mercy and offering their technology. Instead, the reports told a different story. General Vexton stood before the throne in his black uniform. His face was grim as he delivered the bad news. Your Majesty, 17 trade routes have collapsed completely. Our cargo ships cannot maintain their engines without human-made quantum processors. The Emperor's clawed hands gripped the arms of his throne. When the humans had first appeared in galactic space 50 years ago, they had seemed weak and primitive. Their ships were slow, their weapons simple, and their colonies small, but they had one thing that made them valuable. They could build quantum computers better than anyone else in the galaxy. These computers controlled everything from ship engines to planetary defense systems. The Empire had been happy to trade protection for human technology. Now the Emperor was learning just how dependent his empire had become on human innovation. Admiral Korthville stepped forward with another report. Sire, the mining colony on Zarian 7 has gone dark. Their automated systems failed when the quantum processors overloaded. We estimate 3 million workers are trapped underground. The Emperor's yellow eyes burned with anger. How had this happened? How had his mighty empire become so weak that it could not function without help from humans? Minister Yothran, an old advisor who had served 3 emperors, cleared his throat nervously. Your Majesty, there is more. Our intelligence reports indicate that human colonies outside their solar system are not cooperating with our trade restrictions. This was supposed to be impossible. The Empire had assumed that human colonies would be forced to choose between Earth and the Empire. They had been wrong. What do you mean? The Emperor demanded. The human colonies have formed their own trade network, Minister Yothran explained. They are trading directly with each other and with independent worlds. They are not using our trade routes or paying our taxes. General Vexton added more bad news. Our spies report that human colonies are actually growing stronger. They have new ship designs we have never seen before. Their technology appears to be advancing rapidly. The Emperor stood up from his throne. He was 8 feet tall with gray skin and sharp teeth. When he was angry, his whole body seemed to radiate menace. How is this possible? We cut them off. From galactic trade, they should be struggling to survive. Dr. Malthik, the Empire's chief scientist, stepped forward reluctantly. He was a thin alien with large eyes who rarely spoke in throne room meetings. But today he had information the Emperor needed to hear. Your Majesty, I believe we misunderstood human society. We assumed they were dependent on us because they bought our materials and used our trade routes, but our analysis was wrong. The Emperor's voice was deadly quiet. Explain. Humans were not buying our materials because they needed them. They were buying them because it was easier than making their own. When we forced them to choose, they simply started making everything themselves. This was not what the Emperor wanted to hear. For 1,000 years, the Empire had controlled the galaxy by making other species dependent on Empire technology and trade. It had always worked before. Furthermore, Dr. Malthik continued, our review of captured human technology shows that they have been holding back their real capabilities. The quantum computers they sold to us were simple compared to what they kept for themselves. Admiral Korthval looked surprised. Are you saying they were deliberately giving us inferior technology? Not inferior, Dr. Malthik corrected, just limited. They gave us exactly what we paid for, but they kept their best innovations secret. The Emperor sat back down heavily. How long can our systems continue to function without human maintenance? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Every official in the throne room knew the answer, but none wanted to say it out loud. Finally, General Vexton spoke. Based on current failure rates, we estimate 6 months before critical systems begin shutting down across the Empire. 1 year before complete collapse. The Emperor was quiet for a long time. Outside the throne room windows, he could see the capital city of Vex Prime stretching to the horizon. Millions of beings lived and worked in those towers, all depending on technology that needed human-made components to function. Minister Yothrin spoke carefully. Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider reopening negotiations with the humans. The Emperor's eyes flashed with rage. The Empire does not negotiate. From weakness, we are the rulers of 1,000 worlds. We do not beg for help from inferior species. But even as he said the words, the Emperor knew they were becoming less true every day. Reports continued to arrive from across the Empire. Factory worlds were shutting down production lines. Military bases were grounding their fleets. Even the capital's power grid was beginning to show signs of strain. Admiral Korthval received a message on his communication device. His face grew pale as he read it. Your Majesty, the industrial world of Mektar is reporting cascade failures in their manufacturing sector. They are requesting immediate assistance. Send a technical team, the Emperor ordered. Sire, we have already sent 3 teams. Our technicians cannot repair systems they do not understand. The humans designed these computers using principles our scientists have not mastered. Dr. Malthik nodded sadly. This is the core of our problem, Your Majesty. We have been using human technology for decades without learning how it actually works. We became customers, not students. The Emperor looked around his throne room at the faces of his advisors. These were the most intelligent beings in his empire, and they were telling him that his civilization was failing because they had become too dependent on human innovation. What about our agents inside human space? The Emperor asked. Can they steal the technology we need? General Vexton shook his head. All our agents went silent when the humans activated their barriers. We believe they have been discovered and arrested. The Emperor stood and walked to the great window that looked out over his capital city. In the distance, he could see smoke rising from the industrial district. Another factory had probably shut down due to equipment failure. Your Majesty, Minister Yothrin said quietly, there is one more thing. Our analysis suggests that the humans knew this would happen. Ambassador, Catherine Wells warned us during the negotiations that cutting off trade would hurt the Empire more than it would hurt them. The Emperor remembered Catherine Wells. She had been a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She had stood in this very throne room and spoken to him as if they were equals. At the time, her confidence had seemed like foolishness. Now the Emperor was beginning to understand that Catherine Wells had been the only person in the room who truly understood the situation. She knew, the Emperor said quietly. The humans knew exactly what would happen when we threatened them. Dr. Malthik nodded. I believe they have been preparing for this possibility for years. Their rapid adaptation suggests they had plans ready to implement. The Emperor turned back to face his advisors. The most powerful ruler in the galaxy was beginning to realize that he had made a terrible mistake. He had threatened the humans, expecting them to submit. Instead, he had created a crisis that was tearing his empire apart. How long, the Emperor asked, before other species begin to rebel? The question answered itself 3 hours later when the first independence declaration arrived from the Outer Rim. The planet Corlos was breaking away from the Empire, citing the failure of imperial technology and the collapse of trade routes. By the end of the day, 6 more worlds had declared independence. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years was beginning to crumble, and it was all because they had underestimated a species they considered primitive and weak. Commander Beth Rodriguez walked through the research facility on Mars and could hardly believe what she was seeing. 1 year had passed since Earth closed its borders, and the changes were remarkable. Where once there had been small labs with basic equipment, now there were massive production facilities that hummed with activity day and night. Dr. Allen Foster met her at the entrance to the main manufacturing floor. He was a man in his 40s with brown hair and excited eyes. Before the isolation, he had worked as a consultant helping the Empire build better ships. Now he led the largest technology development project in human history. Commander Rodriguez, welcome to Manufacturing Complex 7, Dr. Foster said with a smile. I think you'll be impressed with what we've accomplished. Beth followed him onto the factory floor. Hundreds of workers moved between massive machines that built everything from computer processors to spacecraft engines. The noise was incredible, but it was the sound of progress. Before isolation, we were producing about 50 quantum processors per month, Dr. Foster explained as they walked. We're now producing over 1,500 per month, and each one is more advanced than anything we built before. Beth stopped at one of the assembly stations where a technician was installing a quantum core into what looked like a ship's engine. The core was smaller than the old models but glowed with a brighter blue light. How is this possible? Beth asked. We lost access to all the rare materials we used to import from Empire space. Dr. Foster grinned. That's the best part. We don't need those materials anymore. Professor Nina Clark's team found a way to synthesize everything we need right here in our solar system. They continued walking through the facility. Beth saw production. Lines building things she didn't recognize. Strange-looking devices with curved surfaces and glowing components that seemed to bend light around them. What are those? She asked, pointing to a line of workers assembling small silver objects. Gravitational field generators, Dr. Foster replied. We've been working on them for 6 months. They can create artificial gravity fields or cancel out existing gravity. Very useful for ship construction and planetary engineering. Beth was amazed. Before isolation, human technology had been good but not exceptional. They had built reliable ships and effective computers, but they had always been one step behind the Empire's most advanced systems. Now, they were building things that the Empire had never imagined. Dr. Foster led her to an observation deck that overlooked the entire complex. Through the transparent aluminum windows, Beth could see the Martian landscape stretching to the horizon. But the red planet didn't look the same as it had a year ago. Green patches were spreading across the surface, where new atmospheric processors were working. In the distance, she could see the construction framework for a new city that would house 500,000 people. Dr. Foster, how are we building so fast? Beth asked. This level of construction should take decades. 2 reasons, he replied. First, we're not following Empire building codes anymore. Those regulations were designed to slow down construction and make everything more expensive. Second, we've developed new construction methods that the Empire never allowed us to use. A young woman in a white lab coat approached them. She had red hair and carried a data tablet that showed complex engineering diagrams. Commander Rodriguez, this is Dr. Julie Stevens, Dr. Foster said. She leads our advanced materials research team. Dr. Stevens shook Beth's hand with enthusiasm. Commander, you have to see what we've discovered. When we lost access to Empire materials, we had to find new ways to build things. It turns out their materials were actually holding us back. She activated a holographic display that showed molecular structures. Look at this. Empire steel is strong, but it's heavy and difficult to work with. Our new carbon matrix materials are 3 times stronger and half the weight. Beth studied the display. The molecular structures looked impossibly complex, with atoms arranged in patterns that seemed to defy physics. How do you even build something like this? She asked. Quantum assembly, Dr. Stevens explained. We use focused energy fields to place individual atoms exactly where we want them. It takes longer than traditional manufacturing, but the results are worth it. Dr. Foster checked his watch. Commander, there's something else you need to see. Captain Roy Jackson's deep space mission returned this morning with some interesting discoveries. They took a transport tunnel to the orbital docking facility above Mars. The trip took only 10 minutes thanks to the new magnetic levitation system that had been installed throughout the Martian infrastructure. Captain Jackson was waiting for them in the main briefing room. He was a tall man with gray hair who had spent most of his career exploring the edges of human space. His ship, the UES Explorer, was docked outside the viewing windows. Commander Rodriguez, Captain Jackson said, as they entered. I hope you're ready for some surprising news. He activated a star map that filled the center of the room. Beth could see their solar system at the center, with the Empire's territory marked in red to one side. But there were new markers on the map that she had never seen before. We've been exploring beyond Empire borders, Captain Jackson explained. What we found is remarkable. There are dozens of star systems with rich mineral deposits and no intelligent life. The Empire never bothered to explore them because they were too far from their trade routes. Beth studied the map. The new systems were scattered across a vast area of space that the Empire had ignored for centuries. How many systems are we talking about? She asked. 47 so far, and we've only explored about 30% of the region. Some of these worlds have mineral deposits that could supply our entire civilization for thousands of years. Doctor? Foster leaned forward with interest. What kinds of minerals? Captain Jackson smiled. Everything we need and some things we've never seen before. Rare earth elements, radioactive materials for power generation, and several completely unknown substances that our scientists are very excited about. The implications were staggering. Not only had Earth survived isolation, they had discovered resources that could make them completely independent of the Empire forever. Dr. Stevens pulled up another display showing ship designs. Captain Jackson's discoveries have allowed us to plan our next phase of development. We're designing ships that can travel faster and farther than anything the Empire has. Beth looked at the ship blueprints. They looked nothing like traditional spacecraft. The hulls were curved and organic-looking, with no visible engines or weapons ports. How do they work? She asked. Gravitational manipulation, Dr. Foster explained. Instead of pushing against space with rockets, these ships bend space around themselves. They can travel at speeds that would have been impossible with our old technology. Captain Jackson activated another display showing test footage. Beth watched as a small prototype ship simply disappeared from one location and reappeared somewhere else with no visible transition. We're calling it quantum displacement, he said. The ship doesn't actually move through space. It shifts its quantum state to exist in a different location. Beth sat down heavily in one of the briefing room chairs. The changes she was seeing were beyond anything she had imagined. In 1 year, humanity had not just survived isolation. They had transformed into something completely new. How many people know about these developments? She asked. Dr. Foster looked at Captain Jackson and Dr. Stevens before answering. Most of the major discoveries are classified, but word is spreading. Our colonies outside the solar system are requesting access to the new technologies. And the Empire? Beth asked. Do they know what we're doing? Captain Jackson shook his head. Our quantum barriers are blocking their sensors. As far as they... No, we're still hiding behind our walls like frightened children. Beth stood and walked to the viewing window. Outside, she could see the Explorer docked alongside several other ships she didn't recognize. They all had the same organic look as the ships in the blueprints. When will the new ships be ready for full deployment? She asked. The first production models will be completed in 3 months, Dr. Stevens replied. We're planning to build a fleet of 50 ships for exploration and another 50 for defense. Beth turned back to face the others. Defense against what? The Empire can't even get through our barriers. Dr. Foster's expression became serious. Commander, we've been isolated for a year, but we know the Empire is having problems. Our long-range sensors detect signs of civil unrest and system failures throughout their territory. Eventually, they're going to get desperate, Captain Jackson added. When they do, they might try something drastic to get our technology. Beth nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. By force, they would not give up easily. Then we need to be ready, she said. Not just to defend ourselves, but to step into the gap they leave behind, Dr. Stevens smiled. Commander, I think humanity is about to become the most powerful civilization. In the galaxy, the question is what we do with that power. As Beth looked out at the ships and the bustling activity of the Mars facility, she realized that the scared and isolated humans who had closed their borders a year ago no longer existed. In their place was something new, something stronger, and something that the galaxy had never seen before. Empress Yathara stood in the command center of the Imperial Palace and watched her empire fall apart. 2 years had passed since her father's death, and she had inherited the throne at the worst possible time. The reports that came to her desk every day painted a picture of complete disaster. Minister of War Kelvex approached her with the latest updates. He was an old soldier with scars on his face and worry in his eyes. For 30 years he had served the Empire faithfully, but now he looked like a man watching his world end. Your Majesty, the situation continues to deteriorate, he said quietly. We have lost contact with 18 outer rim systems. Our intelligence suggests they have declared independence. The Empress was young for an imperial ruler, only 40 years old, but the stress of the last 2 years had aged her considerably. Her father had been a strong emperor who ruled with confidence and power. She felt like a child trying to hold together a building that was collapsing around her. What about our military response? She asked. Minister Kelvex looked uncomfortable. Your Majesty, our fleet is operating at less than 30% capacity. Most of our ships cannot maintain full power due to failing quantum processors. We cannot project force beyond our core systems. The Empress walked to the great window that overlooked the capital city. 2 years ago, the view had shown a thriving metropolis with towers reaching toward the sky and flying vehicles moving in. Organized patterns. Now she could see dark sections where the power grid had failed and emergency vehicles racing through streets filled with refugees. Ambassador Richard Kane stood in the diplomatic section of the command center. He was the only human who had remained in Empire space when Earth closed its borders. For 2 years he had watched the Empire's decline with the detached interest of a scientist studying a dying organism. The Empress had kept him around because he was her only connection to understanding how the humans thought. Every conversation with him was like looking into the mind of her enemy. Ambassador Kane, she called out, what do your people want? Richard Kane was a man in his 60s with gray hair and patient eyes. He had served as a diplomat for most of his adult life, and he understood how empires rose and fell. He also understood that the empire was dying, even if its leaders could not accept that fact yet. Your Majesty, my people want to be left alone, he replied. They never asked for this conflict. But they must know what their isolation is doing to us, the Empress said. Billions of beings are suffering because they refuse to trade with U.S.? Kane's expression didn't change. Your Majesty, with respect, the suffering was caused by your father's decision to threaten Earth. My people are simply protecting themselves. The Empress felt a flash of anger. How dare this human suggest that the Empire was at fault? But even as the emotion rose, she knew he was right. Her father had made a terrible mistake, and now she was paying for it. General Marthic entered the command center with urgent news. He was the Empire's top military commander, a massive alien with 4 arms and red skin. His species had joined the Empire 300 years ago and had become some of its most loyal soldiers. Your Majesty, we have a crisis on Mektar, he announced. The industrial world has suffered complete technological collapse. Their power grid, their atmospheric processors, their communication systems, everything has failed. The Empress closed her eyes. Mektar was one of the Empire's most important manufacturing worlds. Billions of people lived there, and they all depended on technology that had been built using human-designed components. How many casualties? She asked. Unknown, General Marthic replied. We cannot communicate with the planet. Our long-range sensors show massive power outages across the entire surface. Minister Kelvex received another message on his communication device. His face grew even more worried as he read it. Your Majesty, similar failures are being reported on Korlos, Vextan, and New Thesha. The cascade is accelerating. The Empress sat down in her command chair. She had been dreading this moment for months. The Empire's technology was so interconnected that failures in one system caused failures in others. They were facing a complete civilizational collapse. What about our technical teams? She asked. Can they repair the systems? Dr. Yothmal, the Empire's chief scientist, stepped forward. He was a thin alien with large eyes who had been working desperately to understand human technology for the past 2 years. His efforts had been completely unsuccessful. Your Majesty, our technicians can perform basic maintenance on human-designed systems, but they cannot repair fundamental failures. The quantum processors use principles that we do not fully understand. Ambassador Kane spoke from his position near the diplomatic stations. Your Majesty, may I make a suggestion? The Empress looked at him with suspicion. What kind of suggestion? Send humanitarian aid requests to human colonies outside Earth's borders, Kane said. Many of them have maintained their own technical capabilities. They might be willing to help with emergency repairs. General Marthic's 4 arms crossed in anger. We do not beg for help from rebels and traitors. They are not rebels, Kane replied calmly. They are independent colonies that chose not to follow Earth's isolation policy. Some of them still maintain friendly relations with the Empire. The Empress considered this option. It would be humiliating to ask for help from former subjects, but humiliation was better than watching billions of people die. Contact the human colony on Kepler 442, she ordered. Ask if they can send technical assistance to Mektar. Minister Kelvex looked shocked. Your Majesty, this will be seen as a sign of weakness. Our enemies already know we are weak, the Empress replied. The question is whether we can swallow our pride long enough to save lives. 3 hours later, the response came back from Kepler 442. The human colony agreed to send emergency aid to Mektar, but they had conditions. They wanted safe passage through Empire space, diplomatic immunity for their technical teams, and payment in rare metals rather than Empire currency. The Empress approved all their demands without argument. 2 days later, the human aid ships arrived at Mektar. The Empress watched the mission reports with amazement and growing fear. The human technicians restored power to the entire planet in less than 6 hours. They repaired atmospheric processors that Empire engineers had declared unrepairable. They brought the planet's communication systems back online with modifications that made them more efficient than before, but what truly frightened the Empress was how easily they did it. The human teams worked with casual confidence, as if repairing. The Empire's most advanced technology was routine maintenance, General Marthick, reviewed the technical reports with disbelief. Your Majesty, their repair methods are completely unknown to us. They appear to have made significant advances in quantum engineering. Dr. Yothmal was even more disturbed. The modifications they made to our systems are improvements. Their technology is now clearly superior to anything we possess. The Empress realized that, while the Empire had been struggling to maintain its existing systems, the humans had been advancing beyond anything her scientists had imagined. Ambassador Kane approached her command chair. Your Majesty, there is something else you should know. The aid mission was organized and executed by a single human colony with a population of only 2 million people. The implications hit the Empress like a physical blow. If one small human colony could restore an entire planet's infrastructure, in a matter of hours, what could Earth accomplish with its billions of people and advanced industrial base? Ambassador Kane, she said quietly, what has Earth been doing for the past 2 years? Kane's expression was unreadable. Your Majesty, I honestly don't know. The quantum barriers make it impossible to observe their activities. But based on what I've seen from the independent colonies, I suspect they have been very busy. The Empress stood and walked back to the window. In the distance, she could see the lights of the capital city flickering as the power grid struggled to maintain stability. Her empire was dying while her enemies grew stronger behind their protective barriers. Minister Kelvex, she said without turning around, prepare a complete assessment of our military capabilities. I want to know exactly how much force we could bring to bear if we decided to break through Earth's barriers. The Minister of War hesitated. Your Majesty, our analysis suggests that any direct assault on Earth would fail catastrophically. We simply do not have the resources or the technology. Then find another way, the Empress ordered. The Empire has ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years. I will not be the Emperor who lets it collapse without a fight. But even as she spoke the words, the Empress knew that the fight was already over. The Empire had lost the moment they threatened Earth and forced humanity to close its borders. Now they were paying the price for a millennium of arrogance and a single moment of catastrophic misjudgment. Outside her window, another section of the capital city went dark as more systems failed. Time was running out for the Empire, and the Empress was beginning to realize that their only hope for survival lay not in conquest, but in surrender. The crisis that would destroy the last of the Empire's credibility began on the mining world of Cordeal at exactly 14:30 local time on a Tuesday. Governor Tonrell was reviewing production reports when every alarm in his office started sounding at once. The atmospheric processing plant that kept 8 million miners alive had suffered a complete cascade failure. The quantum processors that controlled the life support systems had overloaded beyond repair. Without immediate intervention, every person on the planet would suffocate within 72 hours. Governor Tonrell was a career administrator who had spent 40 years managing mining operations across the Empire. He was good at organizing people and moving resources, but he had never faced a crisis that threatened the lives of an entire planet. His chief engineer, a nervous alien named Korthtek, delivered the worst possible news. Governor, we cannot repair the atmospheric processors. The quantum matrix has completely collapsed. We need new processors, and we need them within 2 days. The governor activated his emergency communication system and sent desperate messages to every Imperial facility within range. The response was always the same. No one had replacement quantum processors. The Empire's manufacturing capability had been crippled by 2 years of technological failures. Within hours, the situation became critical. The planet's atmosphere was becoming unbreathable as carbon dioxide levels rose and oxygen levels dropped. Emergency shelters could protect maybe 50,000 people for a few weeks. The other 8 million would die. Governor Tonrell made a decision that would have been unthinkable 3 years earlier. He sent a distress call to the human colony on Proxima Centauri, begging for emergency assistance. Vice Admiral Tracy Morgan received the distress call at Luna Command, the military headquarters on Earth's moon. She was a woman in her 50s. with short brown hair and the kind of calm demeanor that came from decades of military service. She had been monitoring Imperial space for signs of collapse, but this was the first time they had received a direct plea for help, the Admiral studied. The technical specifications that Governor Tonro had included with his distress call. The atmospheric processors on Cordeal were human-designed systems that had been installed 15 years ago. Repairing them would be routine for human engineers, but Admiral Morgan faced a serious problem. Earth's official policy was complete: isolation from Imperial space. Any rescue mission would require direct authorization from the highest levels of government. She activated a secure communication, linked to President Helen Carter's office. The president appeared on her screen within minutes, looking tired but alert. The stress of managing Earth's transformation had taken a toll on her, but she remained committed to her principles. "Admiral Morgan," the president said, "I assume this is about the Cordeal situation." "Yes, Madam President. We can save those people, but it would require sending ships into Imperial space. Our policy of isolation would be compromised." President Carter was quiet for a long moment. Through her office window, she could see the construction cranes building new orbital habitats around Earth. Humanity had prospered during isolation, but that prosperity had come at the cost of cutting themselves off from galactic affairs. "How many people are we talking about?" she asked. 8 million, Madam President, mostly miners and their families. They have no part in the Empire's political decisions. The president made her decision quickly. "Admiral, those people are going to die if we don't help them." "I don't care about politics or policies. Authorize the rescue mission." Admiral Morgan smiled. She had hoped the president would make that choice. "I'll dispatch Captain Pete Williams with the UES Mercy and 2 support vessels. They can be at Cordeal in 18 hours. Captain Williams was a veteran of humanitarian missions who had spent most of his career helping disaster victims throughout human space. His ship, the Mercy, was specifically designed for emergency response operations. It carried advanced medical facilities, atmospheric processing equipment, and a crew trained for crisis intervention. When Captain Williams received his orders, he was both excited and nervous. This would be the first time in 3 years that human ships had operated in Imperial space. No one knew how the Empire would react to their presence. The journey to Cordeal took 16 hours using humanity's new quantum displacement drives. The 3 human ships materialized in orbit around the dying planet. Just as the atmospheric crisis reached its worst point, Captain Williams looked down at Cordeal from his bridge and felt sick. The planet's surface was barely visible through a haze of toxic gases. Emergency beacons flickered weakly from scattered survival shelters where desperate people waited for rescue or death. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, the ship's chief engineer, immediately began scanning the failed atmospheric processors. "Captain, the damage is extensive but repairable. We can have temporary systems running within 4 hours and full atmospheric restoration within 12 hours. "Do it," Captain Williams ordered. "All ships, begin emergency deployment." The rescue operation that followed would become legendary throughout human space. Working in shifts around the clock, human engineers descended to the planet's surface and began rebuilding the atmospheric processing infrastructure from the ground up. But they didn't just repair the old systems. They replaced them with newer, more efficient designs that would never suffer the same kind of failure again. They installed backup systems and fail-safes that made the planetary infrastructure nearly indestructible. Dr. Karen Walsh, the mission's atmospheric specialist, worked for 36 hours straight redesigning the planet's air recycling systems. She was the daughter of Dr. Kevin Walsh, the scientist who had designed Earth's quantum barriers, and she had inherited his talent for innovative engineering. Governor Tonro watched the human rescue teams work with amazement. In 2 days they accomplished more than Imperial engineers had managed in 15 years of operation. The atmospheric processors they installed were so advanced that they actually improved the planet's air quality beyond what it had been before the crisis. But the most remarkable thing was how the humans conducted themselves. They worked without asking for payment without demanding political concessions and without any sign of superiority or condescension. They treated the Imperial citizens on Cordeal as equals deserving of help. Captain Williams received a message from Admiral Morgan on the second day of the operation. Captain, Imperial ships are approaching your position. 3 heavy cruisers under the command of General Marthick. Williams wasn't worried. His ships were equipped with the latest human defensive systems, and he had specific orders about how to handle Imperial interference. When General Marthick's fleet arrived at Cordeal, they found a scene that challenged everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. The 3 human ships were somehow maintaining position in orbit without any visible propulsion systems. Their hulls showed no weapons, but sensor readings suggested they were protected by energy fields that Imperial weapons could not penetrate. General Marthick opened a communication channel to Captain Williams. Human vessel, you are operating in Imperial space without authorization. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Captain Williams responded with calm professionalism. General Marthick, we are conducting a humanitarian mission at the request of Governor Tonral. We will withdraw as soon as the planetary crisis is resolved. You have no authority to operate in this system, the general insisted. Leave now or we will open fire. Captain Williams' response would be quoted in history books for centuries afterward. General, you are welcome to try, but I suggest you check with your superiors before starting a war you cannot win. General Marthick did exactly that. He sent an urgent message to Empress Yathara describing the situation and requesting permission to engage the human ships. The Empress's response came back within an hour. Do not interfere with the human rescue mission. We cannot afford to provoke them while they are saving Imperial lives. General Marthick was forced to watch helplessly as the human ships completed their mission. In 6 days, they had saved 8 million lives, rebuilt an entire planet's infrastructure, and demonstrated technological capabilities that made Imperial forces look primitive when the rescue was complete. Captain Williams sent a final message to Governor Tonral. Governor, your atmospheric systems are now fully operational with multiple redundancies. You should not experience this kind of failure again. Then the 3 human ships simply vanished, disappearing from Imperial sensors without any visible transition. The news of the Cordeal rescue spread throughout Imperial space within hours. For the first time in 3 years, people throughout the Empire had seen human ships in action. What they saw changed everything. The humans had not come as conquerors or negotiators. They had come as rescuers using technology so advanced that it seemed like magic. They had saved Imperial lives without asking for anything in return, and they had treated Imperial citizens with respect and kindness. Suddenly, the Empire's propaganda about human aggression and weakness seemed like obvious lies. If the humans were as evil and primitive as Imperial leaders claimed, why had they risked their own ships to save people they had never met? Within a week of the rescue, 12 more Imperial worlds had declared independence from the Empire. But Inns,